Hello, my little Luxxes. This is another episode of Luxxxy Charms, and I am your host, cosplayer Charsie Luxxx. And today I am going to be your fortune teller to tell you today's ghost stories my father told me. Hello again, and welcome back to another Luxxxy Charms. And I am excited to tell a ghost story for Funhouse of Horrors. And obviously, with me dressed up as a fortune teller, because it just goes so perfectly for when you're going to that fun festival or that carnival, and you go and you see that fun house. But before you go into that fun house, you better make sure you go and talk to that fortune teller, just so she can let you know that that fun house you went to go see might be your last. So please don't forget to like and subscribe and to come join the Luxxxy family. And today I am going to be reading out of the Chilling Ghost Short Stories book again. And today's short ghost story is called The Psychic Fair by Cathy Smith. Nicole Collins liked her showers to be so hot that her bathroom was turned into a veritable sauna. It was little wonder she didn't notice there was a draft in the bathroom until she turned the faucets off. She shuddered when the water stopped running and quickly dried off and wrapped herself in a thick towel. It's cold, she shuddered. Definitely cold. Not merely in comparison between the hot water and regular air temperature, it was a real draft. Did I leave a window open? When she stepped out of the stall, there was a man in the bathroom. "Get out of here, you pervert," she snapped. There was no telling how long he'd been there, what he may have already seen, and the thought infuriated her. "Leave," she said again. The man disappeared, along with the draft, which didn't surprise Nicole. Ghosts dropped in whenever they wanted at all hours and places, wherever she was around. It was bad enough that she had increased heating costs because of them, but the lack of respect for her time and privacy was maddening. "I can't believe he dropped in on me in the bathroom. Don't I have the right to privacy?" She looked about herself to see if the man or anyone else was in the room with her. She was alone, for now. She dressed quickly before she had any more visitors. There was a knock at her door, and she groaned at the sight of her landlady, Mrs. Phillips, at her doorstep. "I heard a scream." Nicole couldn't deny that she'd cried out, so she said, "I saw a spider." "Spider?" Mrs. Phillips asked. "Yes, a spider." She hoped Mrs. Phillips hadn't heard her say, "You pervert." Seeing there wouldn't be any more of an explanation, Mrs. Phillips sighed. "Tell me if you see any more. I'll call the exterminator." "I'll do that." Nicole rolled her eyes as she shut the door. Mrs. Phillips' concern for her was touching and even heartwarming when she was in the mood for it. She couldn't just tell Mrs. Phillips to mind her own business when she exploited Mrs. Phillips' maternal instincts to get this apartment in the first place. Nicole's apartment was warm and roomy, the rent was reasonable, and the maintenance service was prompt. The other renters complained about unexpected noises in the night and cold spots, but no one thought there may be ghosts in the area. They thought it was just the quirks of living in an old house converted into flats. Nicole did her best to make sure the ghosts didn't get too pushy and disruptive, but she didn't always succeed. So far, no one was calling Nicole the freak like they did in high school. She was considered a pretty quiet young woman who kept to herself. She needed a good laugh to take her mind off her problems, so she watched the latest John Zachary special when she was alone. There was the usual disclaimer that this show was only for entertainment purposes. The specials gave her hope that she wouldn't be dismissed as a lunatic if people knew she was a ghost magnet. The people on the show gushed over John Zachary's gift. Of course, it was possible that the people on the show were actors instead of people willing to display their gullibility on national TV, but Nicole was riveted. When people who had supposedly known Zachary in his early years came on, she felt a wave of bitterness engulfed her heart. An honest interview would be, "I thought he was creepy. He was always talking to himself, and I always knew there wasn't something quite right about him. Nicole was feeling so cynical and depressed that she ended up turning the TV off early rather than watch anymore. If only every ghost magnet's life could be like that. She wished she could turn her ability on or off at will so she could get peace and quiet when she wanted it. Nicole had the gift, but she could never control when a ghost would make an appearance, nor could she call a specific ghost to her when she wanted to. Grandma asked me when I wanted to see her next time, and that's when she'll visit me. But I'd have a hard time getting some stranger to agree to come when I want. I couldn't have a live person come to me and ask to make a ghost appear at will. That wouldn't work. She tried to put the envy behind her as she got ready for bed. There was the sound of a knocking at the nearby door. Someone's getting visitors? By the time she had her jammies on, the knocking had gone on nonstop. That's just rude. You'd think they'd know no one's there and that they're unwanted by now. The knocking grew louder and louder, and Nicole knew that the knocks were coming closer. She jumped when there was a knock at her bedroom door. Go away! She sighed in relief when the knocking stopped. You'd think anyone with half a brain would know not to look someone up this late at night. Things had to change, so she looked up John Zachary's website on her laptop the next morning. She didn't want to be gullible, but it occurred to her that if John Zachary could summon whatever ghost he wanted when he wanted them to appear, he could be more powerful than her. What if he's not a fake, but someone who has more control over his gift than I do? There was a list of upcoming appearances on his website, and her eyes alighted on a show at a psychic fair next month. She clicked on the link to the psychic fair's information and website. Her eyes widened at the list of people making appearances and their purported abilities. This could be good, even if John Zachary is a fake. Maybe there is someone there who isn't, someone I can talk to. Even if the psychics are phonies, what about the people who come here? I will be surrounded by people who are open to the thought of paranormal abilities, who think it's cool instead of something weird or delusional. Maybe I can find someone to hang with. If any of the psychics were real, she didn't fault them for making money off their gifts. She hadn't been born independently wealthy herself and couldn't afford to work for free either. Yet she wouldn't be able to help Ghost if she had to work a regular 9-to-5 job, which is why most of the ghosts found ways to pay her back. The information she picked up from ghosts sometimes had monetary value. They either offered financial expertise or the location of hidden assets. They usually reached an agreement on a percentage that was fair and reasonable for her efforts as a means to compensate her for her time. She'd felt funny accepting this arrangement at first, but Grandma told her, "Don't ask for it, but don't turn it down either." Some of the ghosts assumed they were still alive and had to pay her for her time as they would for any other service provider. Some were aware that they were dead, but knowing she still had to pay her way, were willing to compensate her for running errands for them. Her cover story to her landlady, Mrs. Phillips, and anyone else who bothered to ask, was that she was self-employed as a freelance writer and researcher. She wasn't sure if Mrs. Phillips was satisfied with her story, but it was the best she could give. The fair was in full swing by the time Nicole made it there. There was a booth full of John Zachary's products at the front, books and pictures for autographing. There was a life-size picture of John Zachary, and people were taking pictures of themselves with it. They treat him like he's a superstar. Either John Zachary was a fake playing the crowd, or else he was more powerful than she was. She saw that the booth was selling his autobiography. I may be a sucker, but I am buying it. I should be able to tell if he's real or not by what it says. It was too bad she didn't have the time to peruse it right now, but that could wait until later. If I get it signed, it'll be an excuse to get close to him. Maybe I'll sense something if he's nearby. She wondered if her senses could detect someone who had the same sort of abilities as her. She thought she was heading in early, but found the best seats were taken already. Did they overbook this place? It's packed. Don't the fire codes put a limit on how many people could pack into a room? She may have her doubts about John Zachary's powers, but she trusted his business sense. She thought his handlers would know how to run a professional show. Some people would take seats, but then allow them to be taken over by other people. They were annoyed, but didn't put up much resistance at being displaced. Nicole saw a young man with curly brown hair take a seat in the middle when a group of old ladies squeezed him out. The way he rolled his eyes made her think he was one who wouldn't allow respect for his elders to cheat him out of a chair, but other than the eye roll, he didn't protest. I don't get it. If he's respectful, he wouldn't do the eye roll. If he were pushy, he wouldn't allow himself to be unseated. She'd been looking at him too long, and he noticed it. His brows drew together. Great, now he's going to think I'm creepy. Then he smiled. She rolled her eyes. No, it's worse. He thinks I'm interested. The young man walked up to her and stood directly in front of her. He waved his hand in front of her, and she felt a draft. He's a ghost. She glanced at all the people who were standing. The organizers hadn't overbooked after all. The extra people were ghosts. Hello, can you hear me? The young man asked. Nicole merely nodded yes, because she was in a public place. You can hear me. You must be the real deal. She couldn't stop herself from asking under her breath, Ghosts visit psychic fairs too? Yeah, I hope to find someone I can talk to. Most of these psychics are either charlatans or exaggerating, the young man said. Exaggerating? Nicole's brows came together. They aren't as powerful or as sensitive as they claim to be. Some can tell that I'm in the room, but can't tell what I'm saying, or else it takes them a lot of preparation to be able to hear anything. Preparation? Nicole felt like she was completely clueless. The young man rolled his eyes. You obviously don't have any problems connecting to ghosts, but some of these psychics need to warm themselves up. Nicole snorted. I wish I was able to turn it on and off whenever I wanted. They'd wish they'd had your power if they knew you had it, the young man said. I'm Bryce Wilson. I had a blog documenting paranormal research. I was open to the concept of the supernatural, but applied scientific methods to its study. I debunked various quacks and charlatans, he laughed bitterly. I ended up dying young in a car accident and am experiencing life after death for myself. Now I know that the mechanics of paranormal activity aren't as cut and dried as I thought they were. He gestured to the building in general. When I was living, I would have been saying that these people operate by guesswork and intuition. Now I know that some are more sensitive than others, but even if they have this sensitivity, it waxes and wanes. Sometimes they are only guessing, and sometimes they can actually sense things. He pointed his thumb to the main showroom. If I were still alive, I'd create a directory with a rating system for anyone who wants to use their services. The lights were turned off and loud music blared. A spotlight fell on a tall man in a dark suit, and the announcer spoke breathlessly. Welcome to this conjunction between planes, between the world of the living and that of the dead. Watch as the veil is parted and be amazed. The people sitting oohed and awed, while the people standing, the ghost, watched the show with silent intensity. Their stares wouldn't been unnerving to Nicole if they were looking at her. Good thing he's got all their attention. They look like vultures waiting for their next meal, Nicole shuddered. Why don't we do a test, Bryce asked. Test? Nicole frowned. See if he's real or not, Bryce grinned. Nicole sighed and nodded. Might as well, that's what I'm here for too. I am John Zachary, and I am here to help you, the man on the stage said. Who shall be first? Bryce got up and waved his arms. Pick me! His cry was in counterpoint to the reverent rush of the rest of the show's audience. Bryce got up and ran down the aisle, while everyone else stayed in their seats. John Zachary was oblivious to the ruckus he was making, but John Zachary's assistants were coaxing crowd members to go up. A silver-haired woman was chosen and brought forward. Bryce gritted together clenched teeth as the woman was placed in front of the microphone. Bryce screamed into the microphone, Choose me! If he'd been living, his voice would have been amplified, but instead his scream was turned into static. I'm here, Bryce said, pounding on the microphone with his finger, which produced pounding burst of static. John Zachary was frowning. I'm afraid we're experiencing technical difficulties. Forget it, Bryce snorted and went back to his seat beside Nicole. This is a colossal waste of time. I know places where these people could get better service at a better price. You know of real psychics? Nicole asked in a whisper. Bryce nodded. You're the best I've seen. They're not up to your level. Show me, Nicole said. Marine's got a booth here. I can take you to her. Bryce started to walk out. As soon as Nicole stood up, one of John Zachary's assistants approached her. Would you like to go up? The young woman asked. Nicole shook her head. No. There was a frown as she walked out of the hall, but no one made a move to stop her. Nicole found that she wasn't the only one walking out of John Zachary's show. All the people, ghosts, who'd been standing, left too. At first it was a trickle, but as John Zachary kept talking, it became a stream. Whatever you do, don't look anyone in the eye, Nicole told herself. She was used to handling ghosts one at a time, but now she was fully immersed in a throng. She felt as if she was in a blizzard, but she forced herself not to flinch. They didn't touch her physically, but their minds overlapped with hers. It was all she could do to shut out their thoughts, feelings, memories, and regrets. It was too much to ask anyone to handle at once. She saw Bryce at the side of the hall doors and drifted to the right. She made a slow, gradual shift in order not to be in contact with any of the ghosts. Slow and steady, Nicole coached herself. No sudden moves. It felt like she walked a mile before she was able to finally emerge from the stream, but she saw she was only 6 feet from the entrance. The line kept moving on even after she left it. It's too much to ask anyone to help that many at once. I can't be the only one out here capable of helping them. She hoped that there were enough psychics at the fair to deal with them. Bryce was frowning. Are you all right? Nicole sighed. You aren't the only one who wanted to leave. She glanced at the steady stream that he was oblivious to, but said, Oh, are you sure you're up to following me? He asked. Give me a minute, Nicole said. Neither of them moved until her heartbeat and breathing returned to normal. I'm ready now, Nicole said. I better take you to Maureen. She'll know what to do, Bryce said. She followed Bryce as he led her to her booth. They came to a cream-colored tent with a beaded curtain at the entrance. Bryce walked in through the curtain. The beads didn't part for him, but they made a rustling noise like a wind chime as he passed through them. I'm only open to paying customers for now, a woman's voice said. I've got someone to see you, Maureen. Someone living, Nicole heard Bryce say. Send them in, Maureen said. The curtain rustled without parting again when Bryce put his head out of the curtain. You can come in now. Nicole nodded and followed him in, brushing past him. Images of his life flowed into her mind as their minds overlapped. The monotony of being an office drone was absorbed all at once. Nicole yawned and her energy levels went down as if she'd put in a 24-hour shift without any breaks. What have you done to this girl? Maureen said. Nicole's eyes were closed, but she felt the brush of soft fabric against her face and a warm hand being placed on her forehead. She forced herself to open her eyes and saw a woman with a mane of long, frosted silver hair and a flowing cream robes in the softest cotton. The woman's face was as rounded as a Buddha, but she didn't look serene at this moment. Take a seat, she commanded. I'll make you some tea, Maureen said. There was a separate room, curtained off away from her table, and Nicole heard her rummage around for utensils and pour water. She emerged from the room. It'll take a few minutes for the water to heat up. Maureen glanced at Nicole more closely. You've got a pretty bad case of psychic shock. Psychic shock? Nicole asked with a frown. She found her curiosity gave her just the dose of interest she needed to stay awake. It's when you become fatigued and stressed by psychic overstimulation. You need a break. This made Nicole laugh bitterly. I wish it were as easy as that. I want to show you something, Maureen said. She put up a sign with a clock on it. Be back. She positioned the hands for an hour. Bryce immediately disappeared from sight. Nicole blinked. I wish all ghosts were so polite. It's not about politeness. It's about erecting a barrier to psychic energy. You can set limits that ghosts have the respect if you apply your will to it, Maureen said. Not every ghost is polite and reasonable, Nicole frowned. It doesn't matter how pushy or scary a ghost is. There are nothing but free-floating psychic energy, which is like clay to a strong psychic, Maureen said. She took out a planner from a desk. Use this to set limits. Use a planner? Nicole asked. Write in your hours of business and set appointments with ghosts you want to have meetings with. The ghosts will appear at the times you set for them, Maureen said. The answer to my problems with ghosts is time management, Nicole laughed. In the old days, wards and spells would have been set, but all you need to do is channel your will into an object. She held up the book. Best to use subtle methods first. This way you don't call attention to yourself. People will still assume it's a regular planner. I guess, but how do I get rid of the peeping toms and midnight callers? Nicole said. Do you have your own space that you can arrange to your liking? Nicole nodded yes. Put up keep out signs on the doors of rooms you want privacy in. Heavy business hours sign posted. Nicole was laughing. That's all I have to do? You still need to try it out first. You may need something stronger, but you should see a cut down in the number of unwanted visitors you have. Maureen took a card from her card holder on the table and wrote down a private address. Use this to contact with me if you need more help. Nicole glanced at the fees posted in sight at the booth and counted out her money. Maureen blinked. Thanks, but it's not necessary for a fellow psychic. I paid full price for an overpriced ticket and a book from a charlatan. I shouldn't be cheap with you. Maureen nodded and put up no further arguments. Nicole stopped at an office supply store on her way home and bought a large yearly planner and various signs. Keep out, back by, no trespassing, hours of operation that she could post around her apartment. When she got home, she wrote up her schedule for the next day in the datebook and posted all the signs she'd bought at strategic locations. I feel ridiculous doing this, but it'll be worth it if it works, Nicole thought as she turned herself in for the night. She was startled awake by the sound of her alarm clock ringing. I had a full night's sleep and wasn't awakened by any noises? So far, Nicole was impressed, but the ultimate test would be to see what happened when she took her shower. She double-checked to see that the perv wasn't lying in wait for her and took her shower, which was completed without interruptions. Breakfast was unhurried, but she was startled by the sound of a knock at her door. I knew it was too good to last, she rolled her eyes. She assumed it was the phantom knocker starting up again, but still checked the door just in case it was Mrs. Phillips. She saw a strange woman at the door. You're open for business now? The woman asked. Nicole glanced at her clock and saw that it was 9:30, which was the time she scheduled for drop-ins. Yes. There were more drop-ins, most of which needed more time than she could spare at the moment, so she penciled them into later times in the daybook throughout the week. She already had some chores she had to run when she initially made up the datebook. There were no more interruptions while she completed her tasks. She'd been shocked to be allowed to go her way in peace, even when she knew she was looking at a ghost. An old man caught her eye, but instead of crossing her path, he let her go her way with a nod of his head. She knew that she'd be seeing him at her next drop-in time. Nicole found herself smiling. She finally had a life. Well, my little Luxxes, I really hope that you enjoyed that little ghost story. That obviously is not one that my father had ever told me, but it is definitely one that he would have loved and would have enjoyed hearing. But I definitely want to thank you for joining me once again on another Luxxxy Charms, and we are closing out the month of August and saying goodbye to Funhouse of Horrors, but we will be entering the month of September with a brand new theme, so I will be announcing that theme here soon. But if you would like to follow me on my other social medias, you can follow me on my Twitter or my Blue Sky for Charsie Luxxx with 3 X's, or you can follow me on my Threads or my Instagram for Charsie87. And also, let me know if you've ever heard that story before or not. From what I understand, that was an exclusive short story that was written in here. It's actually a very modern time story, very recent, and it actually kind of makes me think of that TV show, the Ghost Whisperer. If you remember that one with it's not Melissa Joan Hart, Jennifer Love Hewitt. So if you remember the Ghost Whisperer with Jennifer Love Hewitt, I really get the feeling that that one just kind of feels inspired from that old show. But yeah, let me know what you think of it. And I am the afterlife of the party, and I would love for you to come join me in the afterlife of the party. And to always remember to slay, subscribe, like, and always be yourself. Until next time, my little Luxes, have a Luxxy Charms kind of day. Stay spooky, my loves. Bye. Where is this here? Where? This month's theme of Funhouses of Horror. How does that not sound right? Funhouse of Horrors. So, and for today, and I am going to be reading Her eyes widened at the list of people making appearances and their purported. They'd wish they had your power. They'd wish they had your power. They'd wish they'd had your power if I were still alive, I'd create a directory. Hey, come here. Don't go on that. Hey. Gally. I am John Zachary. Okay, as long as you sit there. Cutie. It's not about politeness, it's about erecting a barrier